For the business of aesthetics marketing tip today, I will be talking about how to align marketing with your business goals. This is Naren, the founder of this community and podcast. So first, you need to clearly define what your priorities are. So for example, if you're currently getting, on average 10 new patients and you want that to grow to 20, so that's where you start. Figure out where you are today and what your target is. Second, consider all the different options to achieve that target. Now, in my experience, if you are an influencer, then I would focus on leaning into that. So influencers are those who have 50,000 or more followers. But if you are not going to spend, 20, 30 hours posting content and becoming an influencer, getting into that top 1% of people who get 99% of free traffic from social media, then I would lean on SEO. SEO, again, is difficult. Like social media, free social media traffic belongs to the top 1%. Free Google traffic belongs to the top 5%. But the good news is somebody else can do 95% of the work. So you could, technically speaking, put all your attention and focus on running your practice when somebody else takes care of your SEO. So let's assume you decide to focus on SEO. Then figure out, what does success look like in SEO? In SEO's case, it's really simple. 5% of practices get 95% of free traffic. So if you get into the 5% bucket, your cost of acquiring a new client would be, 1/5 the cost of acquiring a new client, let's say through Google Ads. So how long does it take? And what does it mean to be in the top 5%? Usually you are ranking for 100 or more keywords and phrases if you are in the top 5%. So set that target. In our experience, that takes a year. So set the target of getting into the top 5% and ranking for 100 or more keywords and phrases on page 1 of Google results, which is top 10 results of Google. And again, how do you know all of this? Through Google Analytics. Once you have your goal, once you know exactly what it means and exactly how to measure it, now go to work. Hold your marketing company accountable. See if the number of keywords ranking is moving up. See if all the underlying things that make your SEO stronger, those metrics are moving up, and monitor it. So become a metrics expert. So you are looking at Google Analytics, you're looking at your keyword rankings, and you're noticing these different metrics moving up. Now, if you want help on figuring out your marketing plan to align with your business goal, book a marketing strategy meeting. It's our gift to you. It's a $900 value. Go to businessofesthetics.org/MSM, and you will receive a complete analysis of where you are today and what you need to do to, dominate marketing and get new patients at the lowest cost possible. Once again, the link is businessofesthetics.org/MSM. Hope you enjoyed this tip.
Welcome to another segment of the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I'm Michael Walker, your host for this episode. Before we get started, I want to thank all of our incredible listeners from the United States, Canada, and around the globe. We couldn't do this without your continuous support. A special thank you also goes out to our sponsor for this episode, Equa Marketing. With 20 years of experience, Equa Marketing is a leader in digital marketing services for aesthetics practices and professionals. As part of this podcast, they are offering our listeners a complimentary digital marketing consultation, which will include a tailor-made 12-month digital strategy for your practice. You'll be able to head over to www.businessofesthetics.org/MSM to book your consultation, but I'll have more about that opportunity later in the podcast, and you'll also be able to source that from where you're actually listening to this podcast. So without further delay, let's dive into the theme for today, mastering the art of aesthetics. Joining us today is Dr. Lauren Umstattd. Welcome, Doctor. It is great to have you here with us.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit of your background with our listeners. Dr. Umstattd is a board-certified physician specializing in facial plastic surgery. She has always been drawn to aesthetic medicine with an artistic eye and an astute attention to detail. She grew up in Kansas City, completing a large portion of her training at the University of Missouri, and is now one of only a small handful of female facial plastic surgeons within the Midwest. She completed her undergraduate training at the University of Missouri and Columbia and while competing as a Division I gymnast. My goodness, how you put those two together is amazing. Dr. Umstattd received her medical degree from the University of Missouri, where she graduated with honors. She went on to complete her residency at the University of Missouri in head and neck surgery, and during her surgical training, she received the Jerry W. Templer Excellence in Residency Award. She then pursued additional training in cosmetic surgery of the face, nose, and neck during a fellowship under the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. As a respected plastic surgeon, Dr. Umstattd has garnered recognition for her exemplary work in facial rejuvenation, rhinoplasty, facelifts, and other cosmetic procedures. However, her dedication to her patients extends far beyond surgical excellence. Dr. Umstattd also advocates for women, empowering them to make informed decisions about their appearance and overall well-being. Wonderful background. I'm intrigued about the gymnast thing, but I also am going to jump right into some questions, if that's okay with you, Doctor.
Yeah, of course.
So the first question I have for you is, can you share with us what was the genesis of your passion for aesthetic medicine and plastic surgery, and as you say, helping women look and feel their best?
I think there's kind of two groups of physicians. There's the small minority where you know exactly what you're going to be when you decide to go to medical school. And then the large majority of us, we kind of fall into the area of medicine that we end up practicing in. I never knew that I was going to fall in love with cosmetic surgery, facial plastic surgery. It was just kind of at every step of my training and my surgical training in particular, I started to hone in on exactly the patients and procedures that I loved the most. I think that I love high stakes stuff. I like a little bit of chaos and stress. That's like my personality. There's nothing more high stakes than working on someone's face. And so I think that was alluring to me. I also like really fine, intricate, detailed work, which also lends itself to the field I'm in. And then I absolutely love working with women. I find a real sense of mentorship from some of my patients, collegiality. I think every group alive has kind of their own experiences, and it's so nice to bond with other people in your group about those experiences. And so some of it's just serendipity, right? What are we exposed to? What kind of mentors do we have? So I can't say it was necessarily intentional, but I absolutely love, and I feel so fortunate that I had exposure to the world of facial plastic surgery, that I fell in love with it, and that I've had the mentors along the way, and still have so many mentors that I look up to.
Yeah, I hear two things. One is passion. Be aware. I think sometimes sometimes our passion can get kind of clouded over, and we lose sight of it and get focused on something that, I'm a leadership coach, and I deal with a lot of folks that have, guy's been a lawyer all his life, and all of a sudden he realized that's really not what I wanted to do. And but early on, like you're just describing, there was a passion there that was missed, and it was because they were focused. That's what their dad did, their granddad did, and I think what I'm hearing you say is to be present with your passion, and then you said something really critical, is also to have mentors that can help you unpack that a little bit and have support you. And as you say, that's not a destination. That's a journey forever, as long as we're on planet Earth.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important books I ever read was Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Also good TED Talk that he gives if people aren't readers. But it really makes you think about not the what, not the path. It's the why. Why are you pursuing, whether it's your career, parenting choices, hobbies? If you start with why and work backwards, I think that helps people clarify what they want out of every day and potentially their full life.
Yeah, beautiful. That's one of my books as well. That was, because I love the idea we developed a whole strategy around the three spaces of an organization that kind of spawned out of that. The transactional space, about what you do and how you do it, was very missional. The relational space, about who you are and why you matter, which Simon talks about, which is very vision and value oriented. And then when those two are in my world, I deal with conflict management and a mediator. When those two spaces are not working well together, that's where the conflict exists. But when they're working well together, that's where you find the joy of who you are and why you matter, but what you do, the creative space, courageous conversations, just being the first choice employer in the world. That kind of thing happens. And I think it's interesting. What he really described so well was that sense of coming back to what it is that who you are and why you matter, and how are you going to roll that out. But I think it also, the other part of that too, is having the recognition that, and particularly today, with everything so fluid, of being willing to move with where you need to move, to not be rigid, to create space for yourself. I know for myself as a man, we tend to look at things forever. And everything these days is more like a season. And I love that. So that book, Simon Sinek with The Why, there's two books he's written. I can't remember, and they're both excellent reads if you haven't read them. We get no fees back for that, Dr. Umstattd. So no. But I want to jump to a second question, which is, I'd love to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would as well, if you could share a favorite story on how your work, how your practice has had a significant impact on a patient.
You asked me this earlier, and this is the one thing I've been mulling on in the back of my head. I think it's really hard for me to put my finger on a specific patient that has had a profound impact, because as a young physician early in my career, I still very much feel like almost every patient has an impact on me. I think I learned from failures, and that probably stemmed from my gymnastics world. You would understand why you were missing a skill before you actually made it. In surgery, you very much learn from failures. And that's hard to say out loud because our failures are on human beings that have placed their trust in us. Fortunately, failures can be broken into kind of two parts. One is like catastrophic, horrific complications, and the other is just underwhelming results. People feel like their facelift was not quite good enough, per se. And so I think one patient in particular, she works in healthcare, which I think is the biggest compliment that you can have as a physician, is someone else in healthcare comes to you for their care. So we did surgery on her, a small procedure. She loved it, and then came back to me for a bigger procedure. And initially, her and I really loved her results. Things looked like they were healing well. She and I thought that she looked super refreshed, and we hit our target. But longer term, things started to relax a little bit, and both her and I were underwhelmed with her result. We said, oh, I think we're about 50% better from our baseline, not the 80% that I strive for. And so she allowed me to go back and redo parts of her surgery, which I think is a huge trust fall. So this woman has now let me operate on her 3 times, right? The first was a small procedure that went great. The second was a bigger procedure that had no major complications, but just wasn't good enough. And then we redid the big surgery, and her and I are now both super happy. But I think developing that long-term trust relationship with her has been it's been great.
Yeah, I think you on your website, you say there's a page and you say at face, and you'll see faces, Dr. Umstattd's aesthetic practice. At Face Leawood, it's all about safety, patient experience, surgical outcome, and overall well-being. And I think, to me, what I just heard, you just described that in the sense of that, that she felt safe enough to be able to, let's go do this again, right? Patient experience, she trusted you enough to be able to do that. The surgical outcome, that nothing less than our very best, and ideally 80% plus is what we're looking at, and overall well-being. I would guess that after the third surgery, when the conversation you had in the results, she would say that now she feels refreshed, but she probably would go beyond saying not just about the surgery, but actually about the relationship with you and how somebody cared enough to go that far.
And I think that's one thing that perhaps we get wrong a lot of time as surgeons, and I'll speak globally for the group of us. We tend to place our only emphasis on the surgery and the outcome. And I think it's so much more than that. I think if we shift and think about staying at a hotel, well, of course, the actual night's sleep and shower you get to take are important, but really it's the entire experience of you staying at that hotel that's important. And what you remember is how they made you feel. Right. So, what if the shower pressure wasn't perfect? Well, if the check in process was seamless, if you had a little complimentary something in your room for you, if everything was super clean, you felt safe, the checkout process was easy, you forget about the little water pressure issue, which was probably one of the main components of staying at a hotel. Um, but I think I try to instill that in our team as well. The surgical outcome is super important, but it is only a piece of the whole pie when a patient comes and trusts us with their care.
Yeah, that's great. What's interesting, you used hotel, because that's actually my original career. I went to Cornell, and I traveled all over the world in hotels, and you're speaking my language. That was my childhood passion. I read a book by Arthur Haley called Hotel before it was a TV series, and I was like 12 years old. I remember I just fell in love with the idea of doing exactly what you described, with giving people this great joy in this moment. But it's interesting, you think about, I was thinking about three things. You think about meeting somebody's needs. That's kind of very transactional, what you do. Here's what we can do for you. We've got clean room. We've got the fundamentals are met. And it's like you could draw holiday in the industry, say the best surprise is no surprise. You travel all over the world, never leave your hotel room, which it was not. For a season, that was what the world looked like. Doesn't look like that anymore. But exceeding somebody's needs, this idea that you just went ahead and they put a fruit basket, or they did something special for you, a little thing, and you go, oh. But again, it's very transactional. It's about what you do and how you do it. And the paradigm shift is what you just described, is to unexpectedly delight them. And unexpectedly delight them has to go from the transactional, from needs, to actually desires that are about who they are and why they matter. I remember we used to have folks coming up I was running a resort, and they'd come up from the city to this resort on a Friday, and everybody's wired for sound. There's all this stuff going on, and the kids have been crying, and they get there, and and we totally stripped out all of the traditional check-in stuff into separating the kids to having some fun and go play in a ball pit and go crazy and make them even crazier, and the parents would go sit in a lounge, have a drink, and sit down and just check them in there. And we actually increased our customer referrals from that strategy by almost 60% from that group, because we unexpectedly delighted them. And I think that's what you did with your patient. You did a beautiful, with that, hey, listen, we did great, but we can do better. Like, we didn't hit my 80%. And I see from what you're saying, let's go ahead and go, will you trust me enough to go after that? That's beautiful. I think that's a real one. If there's anyone here that's listening to this that's already in the business, and Dr. Umstattd's talking about, I'm not a surgeon, so I can't speak, but I know that you guys are trained, you guys spend so much time in school and training on the transactional stuff. I appreciate that. I don't really need my brain surgeon to be my best friend. I really like them to be in the top quartile of their class and expertise in what they do. But there has to be that balance, and finding that balance is a challenge. You guys get criticized for bedside manner, but some of it's fair, some of it's not fair, because of just how the system works and what goes on. But I think it's about what, as you said, if you're putting trust in the equation and looking to unexpectedly delight your patients, then you can't help but move into that relational space. That makes sense?
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah. I want to jump in now. We've moved into it. We've kind of just moved into the whole theme today because the theme we talked about in the title today was Mastering the Art of Aesthetics. And would you kind of unpack for us what that theme means to you and unpack it for our listeners?
I would venture to say we should all be chasing the art of aesthetics. We should not feel like we're masters. The moment you feel like you're a master, you've lost that hunger for improvement. And again, back to like my blood, my gymnastics blood, there's no such thing as a perfect routine. There's no such thing as a perfect surgical outcome. There's no such thing as a perfectly run business. There's no such thing as a perfect boss. You really have to challenge yourself to improve a little bit in each of those arenas every week, every day, every month. And some days I let the surgical stuff sail and I focus more on building the business. Whereas other weeks, I let the business kind of float and I try to challenge myself surgically. So I think the moment we feel like we're a master, you have done yourself a disservice. I think we are in an industry that is incredibly exciting because everything is changing all the time. There's all of these great innovations, new medications, new techniques, new devices that you have to have some baseline hunger so that you don't miss out on the great stuff. Now, you can't be too hungry because you can't bring every technology and new skincare product on because some of that stuff isn't good. And it's your job to vet a lot of those things and ensure that what you're offering patients is something that you feel like is safe and effective. But I don't know. To say that anybody is a true master, I think, and most surgeons are pretty hypercritical of themselves. So we often don't think of our great successes surgically. We think of who right now surgically in our patient population is dealing with some little hiccups or complications that we're having to help them walk through and manage. So
So having what you just said, if I had if I could roll time back, I'd say I'd like to title this Pursuing the Art of Aesthetics. But I would also put in brackets behind pursuing with skill and relational value, the art of aesthetics.
mhm.
And I think you're right, absolutely right. You know, life is not life. If life's a destination, then you'll probably miss a lot of fun stuff along the way. You know, it's trying to see it as a journey, but that the adventure is the opportunity to build or have relationships, protect them, invest them, grow them, whatever that looks like. One's close or clients, whatever. Like I always think of people. We're designed to be in relationship. I mean, if we weren't, Tom Hanks with his volleyball Wilson wouldn't have had a problem, but they did. And so the reality, you know, there's this sense of being, and I think it's never been more significant for connecting and in some kind of level of stable trust that people are seeking with just this moving target called the internet. So well placed and well put. I love that. Pursuing the Art of Aesthetics. So we're retitling. That's it. Everybody think differently now. So, but I'd like to, and you touched on this, and I really think this is part of the art side of it, I think, and you can help me with this as well. But how do you balance the unique and different demands of kind of the medical surgical side of your business with the business side of your practice?
Oh, this is a struggle. And I try not to see things as problems. I try to see them as good challenges. You know, our business has been open for about 2.5 years, and we are growing at a rate that is hard to manage business wise, which is a great challenge to have as an entrepreneur and someone who started their own practice. I have to remind myself that. I think the biggest two things that I have learned over the past couple of years is once you're ready to hire your next position or team member, you should have hired them a few months earlier. You know, the way I look at our team here, which we're a team of about 10, is I want everybody to have like a certain percentage of their day totally free, right? Let's say 15 to 20% of their day I want to be unassigned. That allows for us to recognize opportunities for these delights that you mentioned. Also, we're in a field where things are somewhat unpredictable. Patients will want to come in last minute for me to look at things. And I think it's important to have team members available to help me do that. And that is one thing that has helped our business grow. And I think so accessibility in terms of our team members and for our patients is key. And if you have too few people working with you, it's hard to delegate things. I think the other thing that I think about with business, and I've talked about this before, is I have my surgeon medical brain and then I have my business brain. And those have to be so different. Medically, surgically, I have to be very sharp, very precise. I have to be super sure of something before I execute it because the impact of a failure is very large. And those do happen, but I want to keep that failure percentage at 1 to 2%. You could define failure in multiple ways there. Whereas business wise, it's totally different. If you wait until you're for sure about something, you are going to inhibit good growth and progress of your business. You know, in my mind, I would rather my surgeries be 98% perfect and my social media and website and podcast recordings be 60% accurate because the 60% allows me to do more. I'm able to put myself out there more. I'm able to have more posts on social media, more blog posts on my website. And volume is important when it comes to growth business wise. And the failures are not as important. If you have a post that sucks or that is a little blurry or you spell a word wrong, it's not the end of the world. Like people will point that out, believe me, but it doesn't matter, you know, whereas patient care definitely matters. So, all that to say, I still haven't quite balanced everything in my life, you know, running a business, being a surgeon, having a group of 10 people that we work with, being married, having 2 kids. No, I'm pursuing improvement. I've definitely not mastered the business and medical side of things and the balance between those.
I love the way you put that, Doctor. It's interesting that, you know, I think there's, in my world, we talk about, I say there's no such thing as time management. Unless you got a different deal than I did, we both got 24 hours a day. And time management suggests that reinforces the need to try and move to that transactional space of it's got to fit in. It's got to, and that usually leads to a whole lot of little rocks in the vessel, and the big ones get pushed out, like family, like life, like those kind of things. And I think, and this is something you mentioned those two. I'm going to throw this in on top of this, but as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, as an influential leader is the way I would describe it. It's this idea that you also have a responsibility to get on the business, to get up into a place where you're seeing the whole thing and creating space for yourself, because there's John Maxwell tells us the law of the lid is an organization only rise as high as its leader. And so that idea that, because what can happen is we get so in the business, so in the business side or in the surgical side, and you just made an incredible argument for that. On the surgical side, you need to be there, present, fully engaged, and it's like there's almost a firewalled element to that's unique to what you do. I don't have that nature in my life. In some respects, I do. Maybe in counseling where somebody's on the edge of a suicidal situation, but generally speaking, you know, that's not. But on the other side, the business side, what I've learned is that I need to figure out what the 20% of what I'm great at, and focus the 80% of my time on that, and then not manage the time, but prioritize the activities. And so, family family, where's my family? Is it, my family's not an afterthought. My kids aren't an afterthought. My wife's not an afterthought. I'm not an afterthought. That it's amazing how many leaders just pull their personal time out of, well, I don't have time for this, and they wonder why they're laid up and have all kinds of other problems. But I think I'd like you, if you could speak to that when we think of that holistically. How do you get up and create space for yourself to be able to beyond the business, but then obviously, as you say, and I think our word today is going to be pursuing, as you pursue aligning the priorities of these different dynamics that happen in entrepreneurship and business ownership?
I think this is one of the areas I've worked more on over the past year. So, if we think about the average medical student or surgical resident, you have absolutely no control over your time, right? That was my biggest struggle in residency, is that you worked all the time. You were glued to your pager. You were always attached to your phone and email because different attendings and co-residents were asking you different things, and there was no time for yourself. You had to like totally put yourself on the back burner. Then fast forward for me, I decided to have children. So again, priority wise, more of necessity, like your children actually require you to survive, right? So I feel like I'm now in the past year of my life have been able to be slightly more intentional about recognizing when I feel completely overwhelmed and trying to recognize when, let's say, I like visuals, when my cup is getting so depleted that it feels like I'm about to dry up. I need to recognize what are the little things that fill my cup, and recognizing that you don't have to spend like a 2-hour morning routine. Like that's not sustainable for most people.
Mm-hmm.
But what are 15-minute things or 5-minute things that you can do to just fill your cup back up to the point where you can continue to go about your day and be present for your mom, be present for your employees, be present for your patients? And so I am like in the infancy of this whole like personal journey. But for me specifically, I'm such a planner. So I think that getting up before my kids wake up is helpful in terms of just feeling like I've got the day under my belt slightly. I think communication is also a huge thing for me. When I feel like I'm communicating well with people and things are not ambiguous, that helps fill my cup. So making sure I'm on the same page with my husband, sure I'm on the same page with, all the team members here at my office, that helps me feel relaxed. If I feel like I don't know what people are thinking or I don't know what's going on, that sucks my cup dry. So, it's hard. And I think that every phase of our life is different. It's like you said earlier, it's not like the end point or the check mark. It's the destination, or it's the journey, and it's the seasons. And so right now I recognize that I'm in a super busy season of my life. And when I feel overwhelmed, I tell myself, like, Lauren, you like being busy and a little challenged. And I hate to say the word stressed because that is somewhat negative, but I would be bored if I was sitting at home right now reading a book. I'm excited about, today and the different patient challenges I'll probably be presented with. I'm excited to look back at January's finances because we just rolled into February. And so business wise, looking at that. So I think just I think the first step is recognizing what pulls the liquid out of your cup. And then what are the things that can help put some liquid back into your cup? And so recognizing is the first step, which is still kind of the phase I'm in right now.
Well, you are and you aren't. Because you're just speaking it out. You're processing it in real time. Just as you just laid that out, I'm sure you're going to go away from that what you just said and go, I just heard some things about myself. Maybe I need to be a little more intentional with this and that. That's part of the journey. That's part of having a mentor. That's about having an agenda-free space where you can have a conversation. I always like to say, if you put your visual, you have a plate of fruit on the table and it's positioned. We have two lights on it. We're going to see it a certain way. But the challenge we have as leaders and for ourselves as well as our team is is having somebody help us move the lights to see it from a different perspective. And all of a sudden, I never saw that part. And I think that's such a key thing when we are so busy and there's so many moving parts. I'm obviously I'm a coach. I'm not selling coaching services here, but but it's so important. You have a mentor, have somebody that facilitates an agenda-free space, meaning that they're not there to sell you something. To even your spouse. My marriage is not necessarily agenda-free. It's just having that. But you said something that's really important. I think is this idea of celebrating the wins. If you think you've got one of the things that I love the idea is if you said it earlier that you want 15% time for your staff to have free. So to me, if I said to them, well, I'm curious, if you have that available to, if that's important, what would a win look like with that? And they'd say, oh, well, I mean, I could just refresh myself and have a little tea and just be ready at 110% for the next thing, or just to contemplate or make a call home, check on my kids, whatever that looks like, right? So the idea of establishing a formal pattern to celebrate those wins, talk about them, and then reverse. So what do you want that to look like? And then reverse engineer it, which is what you've already done by assigning time to do that. That's beautiful. Yet you probably didn't do it thinking that direction, but that's the whole idea. There's I mentioned influential leader. That's what my whole model is built. My whole coaching framework is built around influential leadership, which is about, and you're doing this right now, giving somebody something they don't even know they need or want. Once they have it, they can't imagine living without it. And then can't wait to give it away. Double. That's you all day long, isn't it?
Well, that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
But you're doing that in your practice with your patients. You just gave me a story that just did exactly that. And you just described it in how you're being intentional with your team at helping them have wins that are important to them and creating a space to facilitate that. How many employers do that? How many medical employers do that? It's
I think our patients far and away complement our team. And I think there are so many workplaces that are not great. And, realistically, we're a very small team. So I have much more influence over our day to day and things like that. But I just think that as employers, we need to be better about the way we treat our team, because we would be nowhere. Our doors would not be open without them. And so working in a giant hospital and then being part of a small office during my fellowship, I saw all the things I didn't want to do. I was like, wow, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be totally different. And I think we spend so much of our lives at work that we should enjoy what we're doing. We should enjoy the team that we're working with. We should feel valued and respected. And our opinion is important because it is.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And I'm in your organization and I'm doing a 365 with your team, meaning what I'm doing is asking each of your team members about you. And if I said to them, if you were to give me 2 or 3 words to describe Dr. Umstattd, what would they be? What do you think they'd tell me?
Well, first of all, no one's allowed to call me Dr. Umstattd. Everybody calls me Lauren because I think that's important. I guess it would depend on which person you were talking to. Visionary.
Nice.
High expectations, which is 2 words. Thoughtful. I try to be super thoughtful. Right now I'm brainstorming what I can get them for Valentine's Day, like little gifts. Hardworking, again, 2 words. I'm usually the first one here every morning, which is okay. It's my business. So, and then some things that they probably wouldn't say to you, but some of the challenges that they face with me is I like to change my mind on things, which is hard. I like to try new things, which is hard. We'll try something new for a while. Let's say software wise or process wise. So I always like to try new things, which as an employee, it can be really challenging. You're like, well, what are we doing today? Was that last week's thing or this week's thing, or what does she want right now? So that goes back to communicating and making sure that I am intentional about this is something we're going to try for the next 2 weeks, just see how it goes. And then we can kind of reassess as a team and say, is this something we want to keep, or was that superfluous and unneeded?
I love it. I love it. And I when you talk about change and you talk about that what I heard you say is they would tell me that you lead by example, you love by example, and you are just intrigued by curiosity.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary.
And I think which is, I mean, you say that nice compliment I gave you. Well, you just proved it to yourself. So there you go. I'm going to change questions, but I just want to, and I think that's the thing I love about when somebody, when you think about curiosity, we've grown up when I know you have young kids, and you have little kids, they're 4 or 5 years old, they're asking over 300 questions a day, they say. By the time you're 12, you're down to 14 questions. We strip out the curiosity in educational systems and stuff. I'm not here to judge or bash that, but what's interesting is that I've learned that we have to change the language. It's about having unconditional curiosity and actually being intentional. Unconditional curiosity is curiosity without opinion, expectation, and judgment, starting with myself. And that's when you lead by example. That's when you lead by love. And you just proved my point. So thank you. I'm going to go to trust. And this has got to be, I mean, hands down, it's the biggest aspect. You can't train trust. It doesn't just inculcate itself in the atmosphere. It requires relationships. It requires people, and in your business, building trust is such a big deal. So the question I kind of have for you is, what are the ways you empower your team to build trust with your patients, and as well to foster long-term relationships, which are so critical to the business side of bringing back business and bringing back new clients for new business?
The first thing that comes to my mind is listening. I think we have to be a sponge for our patients at multiple points during the interaction with them. So when someone calls in, what really are they wanting to know? When someone comes in and before they trust us with any care, when it's still in the discussion, education, option phase, especially with surgery, a lot of times patients will tell you, I say the phrase, surgery is the biggest trust fall you could take. You are blindly falling back and you are letting us catch you. We have never caught you before. This is totally uncharted territory. And so sometimes just by listening to their concerns and saying the obvious, like you have to trust, the concept of informed consent surgically is almost ridiculous to me. There is no way that if you go in for an emergent appendectomy, that you as a patient can truly understand exactly what they're going to be doing, exactly what the risks are, what other options you have besides a laparoscopic appendectomy, when you should get a second opinion. Like you're really, with a lot of fields, you're trusting your healthcare team to make the best decision for you because you have not been there, done that, been through all the training, have the experience they had, and you can't. It's the same when you take your car in. You have to trust the mechanic because there's no way that I can understand exactly what is going to be going on. And so I think listening to the patient, telling them like this is the huge trust fall that you have in our team, and then following through. You have to be able to deliver. You have to be able to catch the patient. There's a really great mentor of mine that says every flight that you take has a little bit of turbulence, right? Similar to surgery, every big surgery has a tiny hiccup here or there. There will be one little part of your incision that doesn't heal perfect. There will be one tiny little area of your laser that takes longer to heal. Those are the turbulence aspects. But your pilot is always there. You always get to your destination. Our team is going to catch you, whether it's the smoothest fall or there's a couple little hiccups. I don't know. So I think those are the things that I try to model and practice and talk with my team about. I also think spending time is a huge thing. I don't want to be this huge volume practice where I spend 5 minutes with every patient, or, my team members feel rushed with every patient. I think again, this goes back to the listening component. You have to be able to just sit there and, with your undivided attention, be able to listen to the patient for several minutes, talk about what their goals are, or that they're mad. Sometimes people come back from surgery and they're like, I don't like this. I'm upset. That takes a lot of time to sit there and talk through things with them and say, like, yeah, I agree. Or I actually think you're much better than when we started. And I do think we hit our 80% improvement target. And then walking them through, like, why I think that. And all of that takes just time.
Yeah, that's that whole the idea of listening in the context of as an entry point to trust. What the number one reason people leave organizations is they don't feel valued and heard, and that numbers continues to go up. Even more so now that Gallup just came out with new results that say people are disengaged at even a greater level than ever, and the number one reason is lack of respect. So this all kind of flows together. And I was just thinking, as you talk about the plane, I thought, you get on a plane and the captain comes on, right? Says, this is your captain speaking, we're through this altitude. And if you get on Southwest, they say, they'll do something funny or humorous. And you wonder, there's a line there where I don't want them to, well, we're not sure we're going to get there. And, we had a little trouble with the engine before we left, but I think it's good now. We don't want to hear those turbulent things, right? But I think there's that trust starts with communication, and listening has to preempt communication. Otherwise, because it's the same. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
For sure.
And that's the balancing piece. And I think, as a mediator, I deal with this all the time in conflict and organization, just developing conflict management systems inside an organization. But the most powerful thing we find as a tool is the idea of paraphrasing. So Lauren, what I just heard you say is that you're really dissatisfied with how this surgery went. You feel that we didn't hit our 80%, that it's left this and this, and we tend to be uncomfortable saying that because we think we're agreeing with them, but all we're doing is validating who they are and why they matter. Well, that's how they feel. And in that moment, well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So what are the things we need to unpack? And that's where you get that unconditional curiosity moving in, because, I don't have to, I just have to, so I hear you've got some needs, desires, concerns, and fears. Let's unpack them and see where we can find the common ground. That I think that the hardest part of everything we're talking about when it comes to the people side of things, the relational side, it takes time.
For sure. And I would say, for any younger person out there who's going to pursue a career in aesthetics, the patient that you dread seeing because they're upset with their outcome or they don't like their treatment results, those are the people that you should make the most time for, the most space for, and see them the most frequently. And then it's up to the patient. They can hate your guts and leave you forever, or you guys can work as a team moving forward to try to get them closer to their goal. I mean, to be totally transparent, there are some times when I just dread going into an exam room because either we're actively managing a complication and I'm scared about what I'm going to see today, or those rare patients that don't like their outcome. And it's like, I disagree with them. I think their outcome is great. And so when I agree with them and I don't think their outcome is great, it's much easier. I'm like, yeah, we didn't hit the target. But it's the patients that I disagree with and I think they got a good outcome and they don't see it. Those are the most challenging patients. And I only want to be in the room for 30 seconds, but I force myself to be in the room for 30 minutes. And I think that's something I've gotten slightly better at, but I anticipate I will get even better at that over the next few years.
I think that's huge. To be intentional, it's about leaning into the weather, not running away from it. And this is in the business you're in any business, if there's people involved, newsflash, you're going to experience disappointment. They will always disappoint you. It's just, we all do. We're not, it's the human dynamic. But you remind me, I used to own a chain of flower shops. And you'd always have a customer that wasn't happy with their flowers. Didn't last long enough. The flowers weren't pretty enough. The rose heads fell off. Whatever it was, there's always something. And it's the nature of the product. You got a perishable product you're selling. That Valentine's Day could be frozen 6 months before it's actually coming onto the market. But what's interesting was that I empower a team. I said, every time we have somebody who's not happy, I give you the authority. Now this is different because you're ultimately the medical thing, but just this idea of if you guys can actually take that complaint and turn that around, that they can't wait to come back and shop with us again and bring their friends. Every time you do that, we'll celebrate the win, and we'll celebrate with you getting a weekend at a med spa. I had to stop the program. It was going to go bankrupt with the program. The med spas in my area are rather expensive, but they loved it. They were having so much fun, and so are the customers. And it's all about, you're talking with the plane. You can have great altitude, which is awesome, but if the attitude or the angle of the plane is slightly down, you will crash. It's just the reality. And so I think what you said there for new folks is, how do you position yourself in a way that you're looking at this? And you said it earlier, that it's not a problem. It's an opportunity, that it's a relationship. Whatever that person's saying, that's their best expressed cry for help in that moment. How can you lean into the turbulence? I love that. That's beautiful the way you put that. I'm just watching our time, but I want to ask you, because I know you're a passionate advocate for women and empowering them to make informed decisions about their appearance. You talk about that in your website, and I love that phrase, the overall well-being, which is a very holistic phrase, and I know it means more than just those two words, or two words, one hyphenated. Could you unpack what that looks like for our listeners, where that passion comes from? How do you express that? Because I think that's going to be a common theme with a lot of the folks that are in this business.
I think far and away, my patient base is female. A lot of patients have a family, have felt like they've put themselves on the back burner. They feel guilty for even scheduling a consultation to come in and talk about getting a facelift. They feel guilty about the finances and paying for it. They feel bad about asking their spouse or their friend to fly into Kansas City with them and stay here with them for a week and a half. And I try to tell people that, healthcare is definitely on a spectrum. We're not saving lives here. We're not curing disease, but we are helping women feel better about themselves. And what is better than that? I mean, if you wake up, look at yourself in the mirror, and you feel confident about the way you look, it has a huge impact on your day and how you treat yourself. And so the biggest thing I tell patients is you shouldn't feel guilty about any of this. Now, granted, I'm biased because this is what I do every day. I also tell them, I don't care what anybody else thinks except for you. And that's the truth. Obviously, it would be ideal if their adult children and spouse are supportive, but at the end of the day, it's their decision, right? It's their body. It's their decision whether they want to take this trust fall with us. I also don't like the term vanity. A lot of people come in and say, I feel like I'm vain for doing this. And I say, let's stop. Let's think about, if you have the exterior of your house repainted, do your neighbors call you vain? No. If you decide to iron your shirt before you leave for your business meeting, are you vain? No. Again, everything in life is on a spectrum. And so I don't like the term vanity. I think that there are, whether it's little things that we can do to ourselves to help us feel better, like cutting our hair, dyeing our hair, buying a new outfit, getting a little Botox, or big things that we can do for ourselves to help ourselves feel better, like a facelift or buying a new car. Like I think giving women the confidence that it's okay to spend time and money and energy on themselves is the best thing that we do as a team.
That beautiful, and a beautiful way to kind of to land our time together, Doctor. I think that there's something I always think, it's easy to motivate somebody from the head, get them all excited for a moment, but as soon as the next problem comes up, the phone starts going off or whatever, how long does that motivation stay with you? But if you inspire somebody from the heart, which is really where their true identity resides, the head's kind of bombarded by everything and that, but that true identity, and I think what I'm hearing you say is that you're looking to inspire women's true identity and give them permission and authority and to take all of it, to own that, and I could just imagine how a woman would feel that came in uncertain or unclear, or man for that matter. I deal with men. I have I have a mix of female and male coaching clients, but just I'd feel good. I'd feel empowered. And I think, and I love that. It's beautiful. I love the way you've put that. But our time is coming to an end. And so I'm going to go ahead and thank you, Doctor, for joining us today and sharing your insight with us. Just so you can reach Dr. Umstattd through her practice website, which is faceleewood.com. That'll be, you'll see that where you're watching this podcast, that'll be posted there as well. I want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate every one of you. A big thank you also goes out to our sponsor, Echo Marketing, who, as I mentioned, are experts in digital marketing for aesthetic practices. And speaking of marketing, here's today's marketing moment. How many new patients are you getting from your local Google business listing? SEO, or search engine optimization, helps drive not only new patients to your website, but determines the number of new patients who find you on Google My Business page. A great opportunity for sure, and something we should be intentional with. And speaking of opportunity, I want to remind you of the free digital marketing consultation I mentioned at the beginning of our podcast that's being made available to help you with your digital marketing planning and activation. As I said, you can go ahead and book that free consultation by going to www.businessofesthetics.org/MSM, Michael S. Michael. And so for me, whenever something like that comes up these days, I ask myself two questions. Was it risk to do this? Well, just your time, because there is no cost. And the second question, probably more important, is what's at risk not to? Unless you're an expert in marketing, then this is probably something that could be helpful for you. So if you like our podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. What a great opportunity to set someone else up for success. Also, please don't forget to leave us a review. We love reviews. So thank you for the privilege of your time. And on behalf of Dr. Umstattd, wishing you all an amazing week ahead. Until next time.